Now you've got somebody that's got a George Soros globalist agenda that's trying to tell you what they want you to think, as opposed to believing in our country being great. And that's what the Make America Great Again is all about. And even though we've got the people out here, look, Trump's got them a job now. They can come out here and protest, because before they didn't have nothing to do. And by the way, hey, and you know, that's part of the First Amendment that some of us veterans fought for. And it's not always going to be people we agree with. It's supposed to be for the people we don't agree with. But it's our job to learn more about what we believe in and teach them why we believe that.
6 measures to clean up corruption and special interests in Washington, D.C. First, propose a constitutional amendment on the limits on all members of Congress. We're talking about only so many years that you can serve in the United States Congress, and allow others to go up and serve and not drain that swamp. Second, a hiring freeze of all federal employees to reduce the federal workforce, to save taxpayers' dollars, to bring it back to us. A requirement that every new federal regulation to existing have to be eliminated. What do you think about that? A 5-year ban on White House and congressional officials becoming lobbyists after they leave government service. A lifetime ban on White House officials lobbying on behalf of a foreign government. And a complete ban on foreign lobbyists raising money for American elections. We definitely know that's been a case.
Do you love life? Do you love life? Do you love all the things, the good, the bad, the ugly that comes along with life? Do you love all kinds of life? You're part of the GOP. Do you love your neighbor? You know, if your neighbor, if their barn burns down, or they have a disaster in their family, or a tornado, something like that there comes, are you one of the first ones out there helping out, help building that barn, help painting that house? Not because the government told you to do it, but because you want to do it, because you want to be there, because you love your neighbor. If that's you, you need to be part of the GOP, you need to be part of the Republican Party. Also, do you love your family? Is family important to you? Do you know, do you understand that family is the core unit of our society? That it's family and the parents' responsibility to teach our children morals, values, ethics, hard work. It's a family and parent responsibility, not the government's responsibility. If you believe that, you belong with us, you belong as part of the GOP, part of the Republican Party, and you also, whether you know it or not, support our president, because that's some of the things he's doing as well. Lastly, do you want to be a productive member of society? Do you want to get an education? Do you want to get the training? Do you want to go to work? Do you want to provide for yourself and your family? Do you not want to rely on the government, but do you want to go out there and, again, become a productive member of society?
Well, the first speaker mentioned globalism. And I want to be sure that everybody recognizes that that is a real term and a real agenda, and make sure that people understand exactly what the term globalism means. Globalism is most commonly accepted as the concept that a world economy will have the free flow of goods, services, and labor. Folks, do you understand what labor is? The free flow of labor is the free flow of people. It is open borders. When you hear the term globalism, if you can train your mind to hear open borders, you will fight harder against what is destined to be, if we don't win, a fight for open borders in America. And as Ronald Reagan said, if you have open borders or if you have no borders, you do not have a country. And I fully agree with Ronald Reagan, and I fully agree with Donald J. Trump. I want to make sure people understand that the dialogue on immigration is supposed to go illegal immigration, bad. Legal immigration, good. No, that is a trick. That's what I'm trying to fix. The goal, folks, is open borders. If you can be tricked into accepting that anything is legal, you can be tricked into accepting open borders further down the line. What we want, at least what I want sustainable, reasonable levels of immigration that are more in line with traditional numbers, which is around 250,000 people a year. The current interpretation of the 14th Amendment says that anybody born on U.S. soil is an American citizen. That is not the way it was written. That is not the intent. But that's the way it is right now. If you have open borders, the entire world can migrate here and become an American citizen and partake in the giant welfare system that we have set up in this country, and then they could leave. Their children will be Americans. I beg of you to recognize that open borders is real, the agenda is out there, and I plead with you to help me stop it. On illegal immigration, my adopted sister, who came to us from Korea, is an immigrant. The people who live across the street from us, in the only house we've ever owned in Marietta, are immigrants, one from Bulgaria, one from Romania. The people who live down the street are immigrants. Value immigrants. I do. I hope we all do. If we are giving people permission to come to the United States and welcoming them, we should protect them, we should honor them, and we should defend them. Right now, there's almost 1 million criminal aliens walking around on the streets of Georgia as a result of the last 8 years in the White House. What we have to do is encourage our officials, starting with the president on down to local authorities, to cooperate and get rid first of the criminal aliens. Just so you'll know, local note, the state of Georgia issues driver's licenses to illegal aliens, including criminal aliens who've already been convicted of a crime and are already under deportation orders. I beg of you to contact your state representative and your state senator. In closing, immigration, folks, is about jobs and wages, and what I just said is that there are people who want to increase immigration. The more labor you have, the lower the wage level will be for middle and lower working class Americans. The natural laws of supply and demand do not somehow vanish when we begin to talk about immigration.
Before Obamacare, states had the authority to make the changes that they wanted largely in the health insurance market. But Obamacare overturned all of that. It effectively preempted states from being able to do anything. And you may recall that Obamacare passed on a party line votes with the Democrats making some pretty big promises. And I thought now that the law had been in effect for, 8 years, that we should review some of those promises and see how Obamacare has lived up to them. So if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. So what happened? In 2014, over 4 million cancellation notices went out to people all around the country because the new Obamacare mandate, the old plans did not live up to the Obamacare mandates. 4 million cancellations. Now, Donald Trump has been in office for 1 month. The Democrats, the law passed in 2010, premiums have risen, and Democrats did nothing as premiums continued to rise and coverages were cut short. So we've endured that for 6 years. I don't think we should lose confidence in Donald Trump after 1 month. Healthcare accounts for 18% of the U.S. economy, and Tom Price just got nominated as Secretary of Health and Human Services. So I believe that Republicans will put forward a good plan, and Democrats are saying that Republicans don't have any ideas, and that's just not true. Commissioner Hudgens recently wrote a letter to the members of Congress encouraging them about health care reform and suggesting what he thinks should be done. First, Obamacare should not be a one-size-fits-all solution. Obamacare replacement should not be a one-size-fits-all solution like Obamacare. It should give states the ability to craft laws and to make reforms which work for the people in this state. Secondly, healthcare reform should not require people to purchase policies that they do not want. if you are past childbearing age, you should not be required to have maternity coverage. If you don't have kids, you shouldn't be required to pay for pediatric dental. What the failed Obamacare experiment has shown is that if you require people to purchase more than they want, they will not purchase anything at all. I think I'm getting the hook.
Please continue. There's always time to rag on Obamacare.
Here. And thirdly, we know we need to do something about the problem of pre-existing conditions so that people with pre-existing conditions can get coverage. And state-based high-risk health pools can be a part of that solution. And lastly, Commissioner Hudgens, believes that across state lines selling makes sense, would bring competition to a market that is in desperate need of it.
My assigned topic is the Supreme Court. Now, for me, as both a lawyer and somebody who has been involved in politics for a while, the left, the people out there, they can't get their policies enacted at the ballot box. Because a representative republic, people aren't going to vote for the kind of stuff you've been hearing about today. People aren't going to vote for socialized medicine. They're not going to vote for open borders. They're not going to vote for putting a handful of globalist elites in charge of this country's defense. They're not going to do that. So where has the left gone to get their victories? The courts. That's exactly where they've been. And, there are so many issues that the difference between protection of your fundamental freedoms and them falling away has been the United States Supreme Court. You think about the First Amendment at the federal level, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. The Green family that owns Hobby Lobby, without Justice Antonin Scalia on the bench, they would have been forced to buy drugs to induce abortions for their employees. It was one vote away from happening. One vote on the Heller decision about your right to keep and bear arms. It was a 5-4 decision. The First Amendment, the Second Amendment, your right to private property. I don't know how many people remember the Kelo decision, where the Supreme Court said, look, you can take private property for private businesses' own interest, not for public interest. That was a very narrowly decided case. And so when Donald Trump got into this race, one of the first things he said is, after the death of Justice Scalia in February, he said, I'm going to put a conservative on the bench. And he didn't just say that. He didn't just give us some words. He gave us a list. He said, one of these people will be the next United States Supreme Court justice. And I think people are kind of confused in Washington because he got elected and then he did precisely what he said he was going to do. And sometime very soon, the United States Senate will confirm Neil Gorsuch to be the newest Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. And I suspect over the next 8 years, President Trump will have the opportunity to put a few more Supreme Court justices on the bench. He'll also be able to do a lot at those lower levels of the federal judiciary. But the bottom line here is, in all of these matters, we see a divide. And the divide, in my opinion, is not so much a right-left divide. I know at the state legislature, I spend less time fighting Democrats than I do elitists who wear all kinds of different labels. And I believe that their attitude was summed up best by President Barack Obama, when he, talking about people here and people all over this country, said, well, you know, those folks, they cling to their guns and their religion. And that's right. We absolutely do. And you should. But the sneering contempt that this very small minority of people who happen to be in leadership positions, it was finally, and I hope definitively, turned back on November the 8th. When people like you stood up and said, no more socialized medicine, no more open borders. You know, we're going to restore the rule of law in this country again. We're going to put a justice on the United States Supreme Court who understands he's supposed to call balls and strikes. He's supposed to interpret the law, not make the law. And so, you know, I'm gonna wrap up. I'm not gonna, you know, make Brant get the hook to get me off of this stage, but I could talk to you all day about this stuff. But what I will say is this: there are two things that I want to ask of you going forward from today. Two things that you can do to make a big difference going forward. One is, every person you've heard from that has spoken from this podium today, and the people who have organized this event, please pray for us. There is an enormous cost for people who speak honestly and forthrightly about the issues facing us, and we need your prayers. And the second thing I would say to you is, sometime every week from this point on, I want you to pick somebody and I want you to talk to them about your political point of view and why they need to be engaged in this battle that we are waging.
I am so happy that 81% of evangelical voters voted for Donald Trump. Nobody thought this could happen. I mean, people, I bet some of you thought this wasn't going to happen, didn't you? I mean, but it's pretty exciting. It was a very exciting day. And now we get to rejoice in some great federal appointments that have been made. I'm so excited that we have now our Health and Human Services Secretary, Tom Price, a great Georgian and a great former congressman who has always stood for conservative values. Also, we have our former governor, Sonny Perdue, as Ag Secretary. How wonderful is that? I mean, there are just so many great appointments. And as Senator McKoon was talking about, the judicial appointments. My goodness, do we need the Supreme Court? I mean, we need the Supreme Court to straighten out some things that have been crooked for a long time. But not only the Supreme Court, there's about 1,600 other federal judgeships that will be appointed. And so isn't it great to have someone that shares our values making those appointments, and instead of somebody that we know is diametrically opposed to everything that we believe in? So I also want to talk for a minute about the little executive order that President Obama enjoyed so much. And that was the one that stole the privacy, the innocence, and the safety from our children by trying to force our public schools to open the bathrooms to any deviant who wanted to use your little girl's bathroom. That is just so wrong and so unsafe. And I am thrilled to death that President Trump has reversed that order just this week.
You know, most of the speakers have encouraged us that we need to not just see what happened in November as the solution, but rather it should be the call to action. for too many years, we have been playing defense. For too many years, we have essentially stood against all odds. But now God has given us a window of opportunity. And now the question is, what are we going to do about it in 2017? What are we going to do about it in 2018? We need to work today. So let's take a look back and see what's been happening. You know, I come here representing Georgia Right to Life and extending the greeting of the staff there at the state office in Norcross and our chapters across the state. And we are looking forward to the future because the last 8 years was not good for the personhood of every human being. The last 8 years, we have been fighting the abortion rights juggernaut that has been promoting abortion not only here in this country, but been exporting it around the world. Now, when our president, our current president, rolled back the policy stopping funds for going to federal funds going to agencies that promote abortion across the world. How many of y'all heard that in D.C. they just voted, the D.C. City Council voted to approve euthanasia in the city government? But here's the thing. The Congress has the ultimate authority with regard to what laws stand and what laws go in the city of D.C. They have 30 days to do it. They did nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, you need to pick up the phone. Call your congressman because there is still time to drain that swamp. But let me close. As was said, in the Declaration of Independence, the first God-given, unalienable right is the right to life. If we are not willing to do like Virginia was saying, if we're not willing to cherish life in our communities, if we are not willing to reach out to those that are in trouble, the destitute, because here's the thing, our opponents will say, well, what are you going to do about all those children? What are you going to do about all those children that are going to be abandoned? The Church of Jesus Christ needs to continue to stand up and say, we will care for the mothers. We will continue to care for the children. Lord knows I've had the opportunity working and volunteering with crisis pregnancy centers to help women. Matter of fact, one of the women we took into our home because her mom had kicked her out of the house. She is still friends with us. She was pregnant and my wife were pregnant with our firstborn at the same time. And 30 years later, that relationship still holds. Ladies and gentlemen, that's how we are going to win for the culture of life in the state of Georgia. By actually doing justice and loving mercy. And, as you were saying, walking humbly before our God.
And I just want to thank everyone. I want to thank everyone who made this event possible, all our speakers for driving down. And one thing just briefly I've been asked to say just one or two words about is the issue of regulations. And that generally puts folks to sleep because it sounds so boring and doesn't affect our lives. Well, it actually does, and here's why. How much do you suppose the federal government takes out of our hide every year because of those unnecessary regulations? Is it in millions? Tens of millions. billions, hundreds of billions. No, it is $2 trillion that those deep state Draculas suck out of our back pockets every year. In the last few years, there have been so many examples. Even our friends protesting out here today would agree this is ridiculous. We had a man who was fined over $200,000 and jailed for nearly 2 years for moving dirt from one part of his property to another because he was violating the Clean Water Act. He wasn't moving water. He's moving dirt. I've heard people say that politicians are dumber than dirt. Those bureaucrats certainly are. Here's another example. Y'all like seafood? Anybody like seafood here? Federal agents seized 70,000 pounds of lobster tails and imprisoned 4 businessmen for importing lobsters that were undersized according to a defunct foreign law. A family selling rabbits was slapped with a fine for $3.9 million for exceeding the limit of $500 worth of rabbits per year. When our government's got time to regulate selling bunny rabbits, it's time for them to go on vacation. And these are just a few of the examples. It has been estimated that if the regulatory state had flatlined in 1945, that if we hadn't added any new regulations net to the system and kept the books as they were and updated them, but not added any more regulations, no more bureaucrats, in 1945 to today, the national product of America, the income of an average American, would be over $150,000. That is $90,000 out of your pocket and mine. Think about what you could do with that kind of money. Where is that money coming from? Your back pocket. When we're talking about regulations, taxes, government, we're not talking about abstract philosophical concepts. We're talking about money out of your pockets, your children's inheritance, your grandkids' college tuition. This is personal. They are out to drain us dry, and we got to stop them from doing it. Thank you, each and every one of you, for coming out. Thank you for participating. Thank you for staying involved. God bless each and every one of you, and y'all have a blessed weekend. Thank you very much.